Yes, it is for real. The title is not only an eye-catching clickbait. Hello guys! Welcome back to Not Just Mecha. It's Marco here, and today we talk about a new set of incredible paints. In what's probably an excess of hubris, I like to think my hand had something to do with this result. But I'll be super honest. I arrived at about 20 days from the deadline of my flight to Adepticon, and my first feared Golden Demon. I was incredibly bored. And a bit frustrated by the demanding monotony of the super tight finish I was trying to deliver. If you are following me on Twitch, you know that I tried to drop the project more than a few times. Then, the first top-secret testing batch of Mindwork Studios' new acrylic paints arrived at my door. And all of a sudden, painting was again pure fun. But before going deep into the technical side, let's do the usual disclaimers. This is not a sponsored video. Especially for paints and materials, I think it's essential to be totally honest and have the freedom of saying whatever I want in a review. But as you can tell from the hyperbolic nature of my title and intro, I am a bit biased. And that's because these paints 100% match the needs of my way of painting. So take note that this analysis inevitably has the filter of specific personal taste on top. I cannot show you the final form factor of the packaging, because what I have here are just the first two iterations of the batches of paints sent to testers and reviewers. But you probably already know how posh Mindwork boxes tend to be, so no worries about that. And even the tubes will be completely different. The paint will be carried by classic fine art tubes, that are way better than any other form factor to carry the heavy body consistency of these colors. This set will become available after a Kickstarter focused on Brom. That is going to launch next week. You can find all the links in the description. And if you don't know who Brom is, you really need to fill a huge gap in your fantasy and sci-fi education. I've talked about my love for Brom's art in this video up here. The tones of the set has been chosen and approved by this master oil painter. And if you know your color theory, you'll see that all the mandatory bits have been included. Ooh, and of course, proper universal names, pigments and levels of opacity are clearly represented on the tubes. At this point, I will not even bother talking about high-end products that are not carrying this kind of information, because this is the absolute base. Quinacridone Magenta, Pigment Red 122, Phthalo Blue PB 15-3, and Primary Yellow make a super solid CMY set. I usually tend to prefer a slightly colder yellow as my primary, in the slightly lemony territories of Cadmium Yellow or Cadmium Yellow Light, as Pigment Yellow 35. But this is a super picky personal taste. We also have a couple of lighter blue tones that cover the difficult to define area of technical true cyan. But I always prefer to use Phthalo Blue green shade, because it gives me an easier access to the lower values of the cold spectrum. Yellow and magenta naturally have a pretty high intrinsic value, and without a dark component, I need more steps to create deep, cold hues. And if I need a proper cyan, I can just add a bit of white in the Phthalo Blue. I tend to add a pure, single pigment red to my travel and teaching CMYK box to cheat a bit and have an easy gateway to the maximum vibrance and saturation of the red spectrum. And Pyrrole Red happens to be my favorite bright red. I usually use Golden So Flat in this precise same tone. Phthalo Green and Purple are a nice addition to expand the set in the territory of rich, single-pigment secondary colors. And because of that, I'm surprised it doesn't include also an orange. But you can easily mix a crazily vibrant orange with primary yellow and pearl red, or even magenta if you want it slightly more natural and subdued. And yellow oxide and raw amber cover all your needs in the earthy tones department. I tend to prefer burnt amber for an essential, slightly expanded limited set, but objectively is not very neutral. And browns are so easy to manipulate that you need to have, like me, a proper fetish for burnt amber to have any problem with this choice. Radiant Magenta is for me the only strange inclusion. That, as Radiant Turquoise, is probably there to give you a pre-mixed answer to the general natural transparency of the CMY primaries. But you can easily work around that using a pinch of white. So again, a nice orange could have been a more interesting choice to complete the spectrum of primary and secondary tones. Ooh, and of course white and black as PBK7 Carbon Black. That's always the most neutral in terms of temperature and tone. If you are veterans of the channel, you know that I steadily radicalized the idea that, for paints, art stores always beat model shops. And in the last couple of years, heavy body acrylics and Golden So Flat / Liquitex acrylic gouache have been my weapon of choice for both gaming and high-level competition painting. So I'm really excited to see the figure painting market picking up on this, and basing the development of new paints on the high quality of art store products, perfected and tailored by the peaky demands of super technical, uncompromising canvas painters. Mindwork based these colors on heavy body acrylics, like Golden and Schmincke, revising the recipe to better match the needs of model and figure painting. And the most notable and appreciated adjustment is definitely the finish. Art store acrylics tend to chase the properties of oil paints, that are still the gold standard of canvas painting. But the glossy finish that comes from that concept, and adds a lot of charm to two-dimensional painting, doesn't really work for our three-dimensional surfaces, that benefit from a tighter control of lights and shadows. So, this ends into the matte to satin range. That, from a different perspective, is also perfect to prevent the excessively dry and sometimes chalky look that every now and then you get from acrylic gouache and Golden So Flat, and that I tend to fight with an extra step of tactical glazes of inks on top of everything, especially when I'm painting skins and organic materials. Or, like for the Chimera set, you need a satin varnish to compensate. Thanks to their heavy body and high saturation of pigments, even the more transparent tones can easily handle layering from dark to light. But there are a couple of features that, for the sake of a dramatic climax, I kept as cherries on top. These acrylics dry slowly. We are not talking about the crazy slow of oils, but the perfect slow that you get adding the perfect amount of acrylic retarder to a batch of paint. That, combined with their heavy body density, makes blending a walk in the park, both on large areas and small transitions. Not to mention how well they handle wet blending or loaded brush techniques. And because of that slow dry behavior and their super fine pigments, they are also great for no stress airbrushing. Because of the frenetic nature of my painting, I tend to use products that are more fluid straight from the bottle. If I can shave half of a second somewhere, be sure that I'll do it. But know that with a bit of simple dilution, with just water, you have access to easily sprayable colors that can go from the wet palette to the airbrush with basically no stops. Also, I start having a solid knowledge of how paints are made and work, but this bit is pure magic. These colors never separate. Every acrylic I own, and they are many, even the best of the best tubed art store paints, at a certain point starts separating on the palette. But I kept these colors for days on a well-moistened wet palette, and they are always the same. I honestly don't have an explanation for that. And this of course makes them also great for high dilution techniques, as filters and glazes, because that tight bond keeps pigments uniformly distributed and properly grabby under any condition. I hope you enjoyed this little review. I tend to do this kind of videos only for game-changing new products, and I really think this is one of them. Also, now that the embargo has been lifted, you'll see them around here quite often. So I have a place where to send people to understand why they became part of my flow. Again, the high compatibility of my style with this product makes me be very generous with the review, but I think the objective bits you need to make your choices are easy to see in the baseline of excitement. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe. Remember that you can ask me anything down below with a comment, you can follow my projects during the week using one of my socials, or watch me painting live on Twitch. Check the schedule of the streams on the Twitch homepage. And if you want to support my work, check my Patreon page and join the community, or maybe ask for a commission. See you next week, guys!